and it automatically became law. It was gazetted yesterday, and we're looking at how this happened, why it happened, and what does it mean going forward. But even as we discuss that, we also need to look at what's happening on the other side. NASA has kicked off its national resistance movement. They're already cooperating governors to ensure that the People's Assembly also takes off. They want to use the county assemblies in as far as this is concerned. And we're just trying to see, what does this mean for the country? What does this mean for us at the point we are in right now? Remember, it's been such a long electioneering period, longer than most that we've known. It's been over a year since last year when you started changing the election laws. Yes, with the Joint Select Committee of Parliament. We're still talking about changing laws towards the election. We're still not sure what will happen on November 20th when the Supreme Court comes to rule on the petitions before it right now with regard to the repeat presidential election. Raila Odinga had initially demanded that a repeat poll be carried out within 90 days. He appears to have gone back on that. Now he's pushing on with NRM and the People's Assembly. Probably I ask Bonaodoyo Widi, do you think that Raila Odinga has moved from seeking another poll, another election process, and has he given up on that, and that's why he's pushing for the People's Assembly and the resistance movement?
I believe the People's Assembly is just meant to push for that 90-day election. Raila Odinga has not abandoned a re-election in 90 days. Those are one of the weapons he's using to push for it. You know, the problem in Kenya, we run away from the real truth because it hurts our ego, it hurts our feeling. The problem in Kenya today is exclusion, theftocracy, and such things. If we can deal with them, we wouldn't go through all this. Because you see, as Jubilee struggles to stick to power, they keep on committing even more crimes against the people. And the people begin to harden their positions. Some of these things, they say these things will come, 2 days will go, and we will be in power peacefully. It is not going to work. If you can see a citizen only carrying a stone can stand up to the police, what about if some vagabond somewhere one day supplies them with serious weapons? We have to go back and think about a peaceful Kenya in the future.
Now, you say Raila Odinga has not abandoned his quest for another repeat poll within 90 days. But yes, if at all the route of the People's Assembly is what he chooses to go through, don't you think this one will take longer? Because this one looks at electoral reforms, constitutional reforms, which might necessitate a referendum. 90 days might not be enough for such a process. Don't you, even if he has not entirely given up on running for presidency or pushing for another electoral process, don't you think that the 90 days, he appears to have abandoned that, at least for now?
No, if you read his statement when he launched the People's Assembly thing, he said the People's Assembly will exist until a proper president is in place. A people's elected president is in place. That was a statement in
however long it takes.
However long it takes. So as long as these people have not accepted to a re-election, the People's Assembly will run alongside the National Assembly and any other government organs. Mm-hmm. You know, the People's Assembly is also meant to keep the fire burning, that there is resistance to what is going on. We all know that President Uhuru Kenyatta did not fairly win. He won. He did not fairly win. Let me tell you something that many people don't talk about here because people don't understand technology. This KEMS kit is just an instrument used to access the electoral database. What that means is we only use it to check if your name is in the database. It cannot be replaced by a piece of paper, because even this piece of paper has been printed from the data in the database. It's like having a phone here. We are both calling through Safaricom, and then I call, mine goes through. You come and use the same phone, and you tell me yours doesn't go through, so you have to deliver the message by hand. That doesn't work. These are all lies.
But it is now law. It is now law. The delivery of the physical forms to the National Tallying Center supersedes electoral transmission results, and that is now law.
It is law passed by the very people who most of them are not in parliament through a free and fair election. They are actually trying to protect what made them become MPs.
Well, that's an even bigger argument, because we would argue that way for all the 290 elected members.
No. The person who decided,
all of them went
the
through
person who decided that they want majority in parliament knew who and who to pass through using this their fraudulent system so that they have the majority.
Back to the way we started, this issue to do with the People's Assembly and the resistance movement, Bwana Eric Wanjohi. Of course, the Jubilee side has dismissed all this as a non-starter issue, that it will head nowhere. But there's a real concern that, yes, there's a huge chunk of the country that did not take part in the repeat presidential election. If at all we go the People's Assembly way, this could end up prolonging this electioneering period even longer, maybe for another year. A People's Assembly, if we could equate it to any other process we've had, and I've had people drawing parallels with the Ufungamano initiative, this is a process that took quite long towards a referendum, towards constitutional reforms. Don't you think that we are pushing too hard, too long, for something that could be sorted out probably within a week?
Fred, there are different approaches to what is going on right now. But when it comes to the issue of People's Assembly, it's a bit sad to see somebody like Raila Odinga abandoning a political party and instead choosing to go to become a paramount chief of a certain community. Because that is what this whole People's Assembly is all about. Are you saying the People's Assembly will only be in one community? I do not think that's accurate, because they are working with the governors from more than one region towards this. It is wrong to say that it's only in one community. Fred, I'll tell you that what this is, the people's so-called People's Assembly is just a baraza, if you may call it that way. He can have barazas in whatever counties he wants to have or constituencies he wants to have. It is purely that. Barazas. Nothing more effective than that. So you think it will be totally ineffective? The Constitution is very clear that the sovereignty of the people is delegated to the following state organs. One, the legislature, which is national legislature or county legislature, the county assemblies. Number two, the executive. Number three, the judiciary. Then you have something called public participation that enables individuals to come and actually use their own sovereignty or air their voice on certain issues. This is done through either barazas or public participation forums. Now, what the so-called People's Assembly is all about is just either barazas or participatory forums. But the main thing is there is no credible issue that is being presented that we can actually say that there is something that is going to be addressed from what the statement came out. Number two, we have Mheshimiwa Speaker here, and I'm actually very proud and humbled to be in his midst because he's a statesman and he knows what leading a nation is all about. And I'm sure he'll understand that you can only effectively bring up laws through national government, national parliament or county assemblies. That's the legal mechanism in place to effect laws. When you bring people about in the name of People's Assembly to discuss things that they cannot be able to change by law, what essence
but don't you think that towards a constitutional referendum that People's Assembly could be the first step towards pushing for a popular initiative, which is one of those routes provided for in the Constitution, towards amending it?
You see, Fred, what you're talking about is something called speculative. And it's a high time we came out from all these speculative debates and we went back into nation building. Okay. Even the debate that was being held a minute before, saying that, oh, these votes were gotten validly, His Excellency was won with a majority of votes. Not unless you have substantial evidence to bring forth, everything else becomes speculative. Okay. When you have substantial evidence to bring forth, use the legal mechanisms in place to express yourself so that such issues can be addressed. Now, if you have not done that, or what you're doing, you're spreading propaganda based on speculation. Nothing factual, nothing legalistic.
Bonafara Maalim, the decision by NASA not to pursue this matter to court, to go to the Supreme Court as NASA, is also to be questioned, because the Supreme Court ordered for a repeat presidential election within 60 days. NASA raised some issues validly that yes, we cannot be part of that October 26th date because of this, and this is not okay. Don't you think it would have been right for NASA to go back to court and tell the court that yes, the process as you ordered was not conducted, and that's why we're back to this point after the 60 days lapse, instead of pushing on for these other methods as they're doing now?
You see, NASA appreciated the independence of the Supreme Court very well. And the judgment that came out of the Supreme Court itself was hailed as an independent body. But subsequent events and actions that took place, the attack on the bodyguard of the DCJ, the Deputy Chief Justice, the fact that the Supreme Court could not get a quorum to deliberate or determine on something that was very, 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 very contentious, which was the appointment of the returning officers. I mean, the attack, sustained attack by Jubilee on the judiciary itself, particularly the Supreme Court, and calling them all sorts of names, that more or less eliminated the possibility of NASA having faith in accessing justice through the Supreme Court. Because when Supreme Court, for the first time in the history of any Supreme Court, we're hearing about a Supreme Court that does not have a quorum. Supreme Court composed of 7 members, and only 2 of them appeared. Is it 2 only? Only 2 appeared.
Only 2, Lenaola and the CJ.
And the Chief Justice, yes. I think
so at that point NASA lost all faith,
completely faith in that, and basically said, look, there is no legitimacy in the whole system.
So NASA at no point is waiting for any judgment by the Supreme Court.
Well, there are what do you call petitions that have been filed by
but NASA is not concerned with those.
But NASA is not part of those petitions, and when we tried to go into deliberations on that, it's like, look, where do we go? You've seen what happened. They could not be allowed to deliberate on a matter that was very fundamental at that time. So the feeling is that the system has more or less converted itself into some kind of a police state that will not allow any arm of the government to function independently right now.
Are you therefore saying that?
So legitimacy,
yes.
The legitimacy is, I agree with you. You see, you're talking about an ideal situation when the system works.
Yes.
But when the legitimacy of the system itself is questioned, then you have a problem. Remember I told you a bit earlier, if you are not careful, we could easily become a failed state.
So do you accept when they say that NASA could be going outside the law and pushing for this national resistance movement and the People's Assembly?
Not out. You see, the moment you don't recognize a government of the day, and you say we don't recognize this government of the day, there is no legitimacy on it. It came in through a flawed system and a flawed process, and basically we don't recognize it. You have created an open door for basically people to contest that the validity of what that government is able to do. You can contest. Of course, there's a contradiction in this too, because you have members of parliament from NASA who are already in parliament now, and are saying that we have to participate in this, even if it's for technical purposes. But I can see a situation in which, if many of them say resign from parliament and say, look, we're not in parliament because this is not a legitimate body, it is not. Then we have a situation.
Because that would be the next question people ask.
Yes.
NASA does not have faith in the Supreme Court. Does not believe in the legitimacy of the government.
Absolutely, it doesn't. It has lost. It has lost faith right now in the Supreme Court, because they feel that this is a cowed Supreme Court. Absolutely no faith in the IEBC. They think IEBC is basically an effective arm of the government of the day. IEBC is Jubilee, and Jubilee is IEBC. And then, of course, right now the contestation is on Parliament because of those tyranny of numbers. that is a contradiction. If they are able to say, okay, you have tyranny of numbers, and these numbers themselves might have been illegally arrived at from the beginning because of the enormous numbers of petitions that are there in the court, we are heading in a bad direction, let me be honest with you. And when you talk about a resistance movement, of course, NASA was very clear at that high level that we do not anticipate in any way a situation in which the use of arms is going to come in. We're not trying to remove the system, but we're trying to use the Constitution as it is, and are basically blaming, the government of the day for not following the Constitution. So constitutionalism, as far as NASA is concerned, is a problem on the part of the government of the day, not on their part themselves. So, these things is one thing is leading to the other, one thing is leading to the other. The bottom line, for us as Kenyans, as patriotic Kenyans who really would want to see the stability of our country and the progress of our nation right now and the development of our nation, we're worried. I'm thoroughly worried.
Bona Moita, you should be worried as well when one side of the political divide does not have faith in the Supreme Court, does not believe in the legitimacy of the government of the day, does not have faith in the IEBC, does not have faith in Parliament, even though it has its members who have decided to boycott. I'm told they do go there, but that's hearsay. As far as we know, they have stayed away from Parliament. Don't you think we should be worried?
I don't think so.
Before Maita says something, yes, I just wanted to put in one rider on the same issue of the legitimacy of this. Of the People's Assembly. We had a similar situation in the was it the 9th Parliament or the 8th Parliament when we created the Fungamaro. You remember? We created the Fungamaro as a parallel process of arriving at a constitution. And that is the time when the government, Moi's government that time, decided, look, this is a crisis which has to be dealt with immediately because it might erode the legitimacy of the government of the day. Because when you have a parallel program, a parallel, process that is designed to arrive at a new constitution for this country, and the proclamation of that constitution and call it People's Constitution, then the issue of the constitution of the day itself becomes debatable. You create fertile grounds for anarchy and chaos in the country. Yes. Now, at that time, we were all there. I was part of it. Kibaki was part of it. Raila was on the other side, by the way, because he had gone into the coalition government with Moi. But the rest of us in the opposition, most of us, including almost all the people from Luo Nyanza at that time, were in this process, except a few who were co-opted into the government of Moi that time. It is at that stage that the Moi government decided we cannot allow this to happen, and Yashpal Gai was recruited from outside, and the two were merged. The Fungamano process and the government process, the process that the government was trying to put together. And then we ended up with the CKRC, Constitution of Kenya Review Commission, which PLO Lumumba was the CEO, and Yashpal Gai was the chair of that Constitution of Kenya Review Commission. So the point is that when students of law on such matters will tell you, look, we are in a tricky situation. When you try and seek a legitimacy for something outside the mainstream right now, the possibility of those two contestations ending and putting us in a failed state situation is there. It's a life matter, provided it has that kind of wide following. People are thinking about secession. Maybe, okay, thank you.
Fred, you see, I want to say one thing. When you talk about NASA losing faith on the judiciary, it's double speak. It's double speak because of this. When the judiciary, Supreme Court gave its verdict on 1st of September, they were happy and celebrating. As Jubilee government, we said we will honor and we respect and we'll go back to the polls. When they realized they were not going to win, they decided to boycott. And this boycott was arising from this. They've seen that their numbers will not make them a win. And that's what is going on. After the boycott, they have now said they want to go outside the Constitution and create a national resistance movement. What's a resistance movement? If you read the Oxford Dictionary, it says it's a refusal to accept or comply with something. The use of force or violence to oppose someone or something. It's a guerrilla way of doing things. And the Constitution is alive and it has a solution for all scenarios. If they didn't want to proceed, why did they have to go to court in the first place?
Do you agree that there would be need to probably change a few things in the Constitution going forward?
Yeah, yes, going forward, yes. But within the law. Within the law. If it's time to go for election, don't boycott. Don't withdraw. Proceed. Proceed. And if you're not happy, there are ways to do it. Not to go out there and form a resistance movement, which is like an armed wing. You saw what happened yesterday. They were launching some logos with a fist. When you see somebody pushing a fist, it's a sign of what? People are preparing for war. That is not allowed. It's not in a democratic state. It can't be. Secondly, my friend talked about that the judiciary is ABCD, or the question of quorum. But you see, that was a holiday. It's a public holiday. That had been considered as a public holiday. And maybe members of the Supreme Court were out of town. And the CJ himself explained the absence of the other members. And he explained to the satisfaction of all those who were in court. So back to the issue of this resistance movement. I would urge NASA to drop it and follow the due process of the law.
I think people are just arguing depending on which side they are. If we say...
That is rather clear.
Because the holiday on the 25th was set out very late in the day, and all along the judges of the Supreme Court knew they had a case on that day. So when you talk about somebody being outside the country, of course he didn't decide that afternoon when the holiday was gazetted to go outside the country. Somebody didn't decide that afternoon to go away that he would need to fly back to Nairobi. But remember, the judges of the Court of Appeal were found at 10 p.m. in the night without an application to the court and without them sitting together. Where can we talk about double standards? When we talk about NASA creating NRM to create the People's Assembly. The People's Assembly is squarely under NASA. It has nothing to do with the NRM. NRM is just resistance to the illegalities being committed by this so-called government. And I heard you mentioning that NASA does not agree with the judiciary, does not agree with parliament, it does not agree with the government, and so on. Remember, all these things you have counted, all these organs you have counted, they are a creation of the compromised IEBC. There are some people here who compromised IEBC. So IEBC gave them tyranny of numbers in the two assemblies of Senate and National Assembly. IEBC gave them majority in all the electoral places. Then this very IEBC now gave them a presidency that is also illegitimate. So all these children of IEBC are the ones NASA doesn't agree with.
Supreme Court?
Sorry?
What about the Supreme Court?
Supreme Court, the problem began when the Supreme Court decided on 25th that they don't have a quorum. And we know the events leading towards that quorum. First, there was declaration of a holiday before the election, but there was no holiday gazetted on the election day. Why would we have a holiday on a day before the election? We have never had it before. That was definitely mischief. Then the next day, then in the evening, the bodyguard of the Deputy Chief Justice is shot. Then the next day we are told the other judges are missing. Some are out of the country, some are in their villages. Then that is mischief. When you see the Supreme Court begin such mischief, then you can't have confidence in it. So NASA has every right not to have confidence in all these bodies. But then they had earlier given conditions that we are going to go for this election if certain minimum reforms are agreed on. And these minimum reforms did not affect the rights of Jubilee to go to this election. There was nothing wrong with making the electoral ICT system public. It was going to affect nobody. And when you refuse this kind of transparency, definitely we have to lose confidence in you.
Okay. Eric Wanjo, you want to add something to that?
Yes. A couple of things that have been spoken. First of all, I agree with my dear brother Mweshimiwa here that whatever happens has got to be done within the confinements of law. It has got to be done within the confinements of the Constitution that holds us together, not just as panelists, but as a Republic of Kenya. So whatever is done has got to be done within the confinements of the Constitution and of the law. With a lot of respect and admiration to Honorable Speaker, and my dear brothers and sisters, I mean my dear brothers here.
There's no sister today, unfortunately.
Yeah, behind the camera since they are sisters. But anyway, with due admiration and respect for them, I have to state this. His Excellency the President and Deputy President do not require NASA or Raila Odinga to validate their capacity to deliver the constitutional mandate to this country. Neither does the judiciary or parliament or anyone else that has been set up according to the constitution that we have. We do not require the validation of Raila Odinga or NASA or any other person to deliver the constitutional mandate that has been set forth for us to deliver. Okay. What we should be looking at is not what NASA says or does, or what Raila Odinga says or does, or even more often than not fantasizes about. It's all about what is in the Constitution, what is in the law, and what is the best course for Kenya. I'm very uncomfortable when I hear Honorable Speaker mentioning words that we shouldn't even mention. Violence, extremism in Kenya. I know at heart his track record speaks for himself. He's Kenya at heart, and would expect a statesman's statement from him that whatever direction we take, there will be no violence in this country. Whatever direction we take, we will resolve issues according to the Constitution and according to the law. Okay. Because that is what binds us together as a nation.
Wanafara Maalim, on the 20th of this month, the Supreme Court will make a declaration either way on the petitions before it with regard to the repeat presidential election. Now that NASA is clear they do not have faith in the Supreme Court, you're questioning the legitimacy of the president, but you've not gone to court to challenge it. IEBC, you have a problem with it. Parliament, members of NASA have still not been allowed to go back. Are you asking your members to defy all these institutions, including the Supreme Court? Is that what you're saying? Because now you're saying it's time that you go outside the confines of what we have.
You see, let me tell you, I'm not saying that we go outside the confines, but what I'm saying is we have lost, how many lives have been lost now since the electoral process started?
I think there are 59 from my count.
Well, according to an Imule report, there are 36. According to police reports, there are 19.
36, I think, was this re-election, this fresh one. Then add with the earlier one.
I'm quoting the Imule report. The Imule report says 36 between August the 8th and October 26th.
Yeah, we've lost about 36 lives. We have not lost these 36 lives because somebody came here on the national TV and told people to go and resist. These were spontaneous things that happen. Our history is that every time we have an election, the people who feel that they have been aggrieved, the election has been stolen from them, and they go out into the streets. And then, of course, the security machinery also, more often than not, overreacts. What I'm trying to say is, you see, it's not a big issue when you say 2 + 2 makes 4. There's this condition and there's this condition. And these are 2 conditions that are evolving. These are 2 conditions that are present, they are factual, and they're moving in a given direction. You can definitely, very easily, with a lot of certainty, be able to speculate what will be the results. The country is divided. It's not something that we will say is not the case. Nobody is saying right now, people in Luo Nyanza are very happy. They have nothing against the Jubilee government. They supported it. They want us to move on. It's only Raila. You can't say that. You can't say the same also for Coast Province. Look at the regions that boycott elections in the country now. It's not less than 50% of what we have in the country. So that in itself is a problem. You see, don't placate, don't try and say, oh, His Excellency, they're all excellencies. I have no problem with His Excellency the President, His Excellency the former Prime Minister, but the country is big. What we need to do is to say, hey, we are careening towards a problem. We need, as intellectuals, as technocrats, as politicians, how do we save our country? Because we have a problem. You understand my point? That is what I'm trying to tell you. I'm saying that NASA, by and large, plus its own followers, feel that the Supreme Court has been intimidated. You see what I mean? Because they link up also the attempt on the life of the driver of the DCJ as an effort to try and intimidate him, and of course people say that the others have been intimidated. They feel that the Electoral Commission itself has also been intimidated, because here was Chebukati, one moment saying that I cannot hold a free and fair election. I can't guarantee. As it is, I am at pains in trying to come to terms with what happened in the 8th of August. And a few days later, much later, he said, oh, it's all, everything is in place. You understand my point? Mm-hmm. So all these problems are there. You cannot wish them away. So what we are saying is that I'm personally one person who is looking for the unity of this country. I want to see Kenya better than we are today.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I don't want us to fall into an abyss. But by saying, oh, things are good, they are here, we are celebratory, we let us, the celebration is on, let's cut the cake. I mean, it's nonsense, absolute nonsense. Okay. We don't have that situation. We have a thoroughly divided country, and it takes serious statesmen to come and heal that rift, yes, and bring this country together.
Gentlemen,
it doesn't take name calling, oh, it is so. By the way, I want your side, to as much as possible, the Jubilee side, to desist from trying to call Raila names, because it doesn't help. It merely fortifies the resolve of the people behind them. The same way, if you talk issues, I had a problem trying to say that the president had a necessity, because that's a strong word, mm-hmm, to use against the president. President has a following, and every Kenyan has got to respect that there's a president here. Uhuru, Ruto is there, respect him. Raila is there, respect him. Mudavadi is there, respect him. Kalonzo is there. So there is need for us to respect these people and say, instead of just name calling and behaving as if like, oh, we Raila, we Nani, that is absolute crap. It doesn't take us anywhere.
Let's take this conversation forward, gentlemen. We seem to agree that there's a problem. Yes? You may call it exclusion, you may mention things about entitlement, representation, the national cake and all these things. But we have this tendency to believe that an election will resolve those problems. And every time we go for an election, it becomes an even bigger problem. Don't you think we're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, which is actually the definition of madness?
I don't think so. What we need to look at it is this way. This problem arose from the presidential election. But we are not looking at what happened. There were how many elections on the 8th of August? Member of the County Assembly, members of Parliament, the senators, women reps, all those, nobody saying there's a problem. It's only there's a problem when it came to presidential, which the Supreme Court addressed itself and said it must be done afresh. Instead of NASA going to participate, their candidate withdraws. And now they're saying the country is divided. Yes, it has to be divided, because when you go to an election...
divided because of elections? Are you saying our problems emanate from elections? Or
precisely so, because when you go to an election, it's a competition. A competition, there will be the winner and there will be a loser. What we need to agree and say is that is our supreme law, the Constitution, taking care of all this. There's been talk by, I'm told, I think it was a religious society, that maybe to resolve these issues, you may need to amend the Constitution and take care of these other fellows or candidates who never make it. This has been, the talk has been, is it the NCCK? So maybe that's the cause of the problem. But to go and outside the law, creating an armed wing, NRM, demonstrations, disrupting the way of life, will not solve our problem.
Are elections a problem, and are we seeking a remedy from the same problem?
First of all, I keep on hearing this thing that NASA has gone outside the Constitution to create something. we have read Article 1, Sub-Article 2 here again and again. The people can express their sovereignty through their elected leaders or directly. NASA has chosen to go this direct route. This direct route has nothing to do with the elected leaders. Because if the elected leaders have become rogue because of the way they were elected, we can abandon them as the people and chart our own path that is in our interest. But why the election is a problem again and again and again? Each time there is an election and some people are elected, they are given an opportunity to win the people to their side. President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto had a 5-year opportunity to convince the Republic of Kenya that they will run an inclusive government. They will run a corruption-free government, so that when we come to an election time, we don't have to battle them to get out. We would just say our turn will come, and we will also demonstrate how inclusive we are and how non-corrupt we are. But alas, they did not do that. So trying to go to election believing that these problems, they don't go, because for them, they have created a way in which they are going to take the leadership. So when he says that whenever there's an election, there has to be a winner and a loser. It is no different from in sports where you win the race after taking steroids. It will be nullified. But when you are told to open your bag so that we see if these steroids are really there, then you refuse. Then I say, I can't go back with him if he can't open his bag so that I see if he's going to take those steroids again, and then he beats me again. Because you keep on saying, oh, this guy doesn't accept losing. Of course, when you live next to a thief, you will always be at the police station every evening. Mm-hmm. And the police will start saying, why do you always come here? Investigate that man is a thief. And when they refuse to do that, you will keep on going there. So this is the scenario we are in Kenya today. All we needed to do, if Raila Odinga is complaining and he has no case, and he says, open the server so that we see the logs, how the transmission took place from throughout the country, and you refuse. What do you leave us? You leave us to believe that you stole the election and you don't want yourself to be discovered in public.
Is it fact that if we remedy everything that is said to be wrong with our electoral system, that we'll have solved half the problems that this country is bedeviled with?
But Ndimuli, I have to admit that this country has gone through many elections before. And we will go through many other elections even after this one. This is not the first or the last elections that we're going through as a country. The most important thing is to chart the way forward. We have seen that elections in this country are so divisive. Each and every election cycle brings along divisions. Elections are not the problems. We have underlying problems as Kenyans, starting with one, hatred. Intercommunal hatred. It is there. We need to address that. That is why we all call for peace and national cohesion. Because even in solving all these issues, for instance, in revitalizing our economy, we need to work together as a team. There is no one community that will come and tell us, or one individual that will come and tell us that they're going to revive this economy themselves. They all need our support, either at micro or macro level. We need to address the fundamental issues that divide us in this country. Not just look at election cycles, because election cycles just come to aggravate either the differences, the hatred, or the issues that are at hand. We are not refusing the fact that we are not in a perfect situation. We all know that. This country is not perfect. Nobody is perfect in this country. But the question is, how best do we move forward?
But don't you think that this election and this electoral process has just come to worsen the situation? Yes. That's the question.
Fred, when you use a word such as, for instance, resistance, in a movement or party or whatever, is it unifying or is it divisive? Just the word resistance there, it's already an indication that when you're resisting, you're saying we are segregating ourselves from the rest, meaning that there is no call for unity or attempt to unify with the rest. That is why we need to come out of this kind of mentality, that we are not at war. We are not fully divided. the differences that we have amongst ourselves can be resolved. But the question is, are they going to be resolved politically, or will it be a concerted effort through politics, government, and all other industries, as Mheshimiwa Speaker mentioned, that if you're good in this area, come, let's build the country together.
Okay.
Add your voice to it.
Wanafara Maalim, you've witnessed quite a number of elections in your lifetime here in Kenya. It appears that the more democratic our society gets, the worse we get in terms of being divided as a nation. Yes, there were divisions even back in the 1980s when I was a very small boy, and in the 90s when we had elections, plus the clamor for multi-party, yet we did not see the kind of divisions we are seeing clearly being defined now. Is democracy really working for us, or is it just worsening our problem?
Let me tell you one thing. You know, the people who preach water and drink wine, people who think a certain condition as it presents itself is bad if they are the receiving end, but the day they are benefiting from it, it's a different issue altogether. Dishonesty, both intellectual dishonesty, you know, basic dishonesty is what has bedeviled this country. I have a lot of respect for Maita. We were here together in 2007, and we're in a worse situation than we have today. The narrative that time from his side is different from the narrative today, because today it's, you know, at that time it's we have a conflict in the country, and look at the interviews that were given by those of us who were in ODM that time. Many people were, including the current deputy president, saying that, you see, you cannot bask in the sunshine when you've got a stolen election. You see what I mean? Now today, when somebody says, look, this election is stolen, the same guy yesterday who was saying that you can't steal elections and get away with it, is not going to work, is giving a different narrative today. You get my point? So we have a lot of dishonesty in the country. We have this pathological, ingrained, you know, and audacious dishonesty that we keep on parading all the time, provided we have something to gain from it. I'm telling Kenyans, the honeymoon is over. Only honesty and a straight talk and the truth can deliver this country. Let me be very honest with you. And increasingly, people are getting bolder and bolder and bolder and bolder. You see what I mean? You could get away with certain dishonesty and use a little bit of force, use a little bit of money, and get away with it before. But people are digital. People are different. People want to see universal suffrage, in the sense that they want to see economic empowerment that is across the board. They want to see employment. They want to see their votes counting. They want to see all that things. And I think this is the right moment. What needs to be done? Life abhors a vacuum. I don't say that we have a president today. We have a president, rightly or wrongly, the way he's there. I mean, whether somebody is going to contest and say that he's there illegally or illegitimately, or he's there legitimately and legally, we have a president. What they need to do right now is to cut the chase and cut the hanky-panky business and cut the cheap talk here and there, the politicking, and say, look, we have a situation, we need to save this country. The president and his deputy. The same also with Raila and the other members of the NASA coalition, the other principals, and say, hey, you know, we can go around talking, you know, trying to cheat the international community, trying to cheat the world, trying to cheat our own Kenyans, but we know the truth. We are together in this. Let's sit down and chart the way forward for this country.
Do you think elections would be a solution?
Elections have never happened free and fair in this country, from day one. I don't know about the one of 1960, is it 62, which was supervised that time by, but elections across the board, particularly at the top there, has never been free and fair. And it's a fact, because the same people, Ruto is now there with Uhuru.
Yet previously we've been able to move on. This time around we appear like we are not able to move from this paralysis that we are in right now. Why, how different is it this time around?
Well, at that time we had statesmen. We had, Kibaki was a serious statesman. And I'm telling Uhuru and Ruto to rise up to that. I'm telling Raila to rise up to that. And I'm telling Mudavadi and Kalonzo Musyoka to rise up to that and come together and save this country. Because 50% of this country is too much to ignore. 30%, 25% is too much to ignore. If 25% feel excluded, we don't have a country.
Okay.
You see, so what basically needs to be done is that let's cut the chase, let's cut the hanky-panky business, na ile urongo yote iko kila mahali watu wanakimbia naye, oh we got this, we got that. We know it's a crap. Okay. It doesn't exist. So what needs to be done is, these are two strong, what do you call, centers. They need to come together and save this country.
Bwana Sami Moit, are you able to match what Bwana Farah has just said?
Maybe my comments on this would be, yes, this country has gone through a number of elections. The current parliament is the 12th parliament. So we have had as equal number of elections as they've been. And I want to take us back to 2007, 2008. My speaker was there then. It's very fresh in our minds, where lives were lost, property destroyed, and that's what gave birth to the new constitution. We are now in the process of implementing this constitution. We're not saying the constitution is perfect, but as we go along, let's be within that document, which we bequeathed ourselves in 2010. There could be problems here and there. The question of the elections being perfect, far from it, they can never be worldwide. There will always be one problem here and there. That's why at the end of an election, there is room for people to petition in the various election courts to be able to get the truth and reprieve and confirmation where it's possible. This particular one is no different. What should have happened is that all of us should have gone through the system, let the rigors of electoral process be play out. We go to the courts and agree at the end of the day and say, never again will we have Kenyans losing their lives. And I'm sorry, with the due respect that we've lost lives in this election. We should not be losing elections at any given electoral cycle.
Yeah.
So elections may not be the panacea and the solution for our problems. We need to sit, but we need not set up movements out there. We should be within the jacket of the law and say, if this law is not doing well, what can we do to make it work for us? Mm-hmm. Yes.
The kind of, both in Jubilee and NASA, these are gentlemen that have worked in same governments, same cabinet. How different is it? What certainty do we have that even if NASA was to take over, that would be the solution to the problems we have as a country? Because that is one thing. The other issue is political ambition. That someone wants to lead the country, someone wants to be the president, from both sides. There's that political ambition vis-a-vis the real problems that face the country. Don't you think we are cheating ourselves that a credible election, if at all there's such a thing, will resolve our real problems?
If NASA took over through an unfair election, they will not do any better, because they will owe their legitimacy to that unfair election. We keep on insisting that there is a constitution and we need to follow it. If we were to follow the constitution that we have today to the letter, we would have a very fair election. Because this is the same constitution that demands that whatever voting system used in this country, it has to be accurate, simple, verifiable, it has to be secure, accountable, and transparent. If all these things are obeyed, of which the most important there is transparent, let the loser notice that actually Ovidi has voted to me here, his vote is here, it is there, it is now the total there. At the end of the day, he sees all his voters' votes are maybe 2 million, the winners' votes are 6 million, and he can trace those winners' votes. But here we are in an opaque system that after the voting, you don't know what happens thereafter. And it is very simple to make the losers and the winners see what is happening. Because the constitution envisaged a voting system in which the counting will take place at the voting center. It is counted there in the presence of some voters and the agents. It is tallied at the constituency and displayed. After that display, it is also sent to the National Tallying Center and displayed indicating this has come from this constituency. So those who sent it
if
from
we had all that system right, correctly,
yes, correctly,
to the end, are you saying that would resolve our issues?
It will resolve, because there's nowhere you are going to get a complaint from. You saw how your votes moved.
So our problem is on the elections.
Yes, but again,
yes,
it also, that constitution also insisted that these results must be promptly displayed. On 28th of July, I remember Chebukati saying, we will have an update of the voter turnout every 3 hours. And that is how the KEMS kits are configured to do it. Why didn't they even give it after 6 hours? Because there is something to hide. As long as the other side sees there's something being hidden, they will never accept the results of such an election.
Wow. We're just about to go on a break, but before that, Eric Wanjohi?
Yes, very quickly. The system, the election system, is a very small, minute component of what the problem is. What we have is selective liking of the Constitution. That when it suits me, this Constitution is good. When it doesn't suit me, the Constitution, I really don't care much about the Constitution. What we need to do is to first of all accept that this is a Constitution of Kenya that holds us together. All institutions that have been set up in the Constitution, A, must be respected. B, we must instill confidence in the bearers of those offices, because that's the only way that we can be able to trust the output of what they deliver. You are aware that even before the election started, before voting started, there was the rhetoric. Oh, these guys are planning to rig elections. Oh, these other guys are planning to rig. When you have such rhetoric going on, it really doesn't matter how good or how bad that system is. A rhetoric has already been spread that either way, the outcome is rigged. So the propaganda now starts on how exactly it was rigged, whether propaganda or whether factual. So I think what we need to do is to first of all go back to the basics of the Parliament of Mheshimiwa Speaker, whereby they decided that this country is for all Kenyans. Let us put in place mechanisms that are going to join us together, bind us together as a country, be it in the electoral system, be it in the dispensement of government services, or even in the delivery of government services. We need to understand that without holding each other's hand, we're just dividing ourselves. And once we create that trust, no matter how good or how bad a system is, it becomes irrelevant, because doubt has already been cast in it.
Okay. Well said. Let's take a break. When we come back, we continue with this. Citizen Extra continues.